The time is just gone 12 minutes past 9 as we continue with the second half of this morning's edition of News and Views right here on Salam Media. And still to come on the show this morning is we will be taking a look ahead at the elections and the whole question surrounding requirements for unrepresented political parties. We're also talking this morning with 20 years of Islamic Relief South Africa working in South Africa, talking about their fund raising initiatives. We'll be talking with Naweed Mohammed about this. And also, last night's broadcast, we're talking about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Dr. Fauzia Alvi, a Canadian physician, and she is part of a relief organization who was in Gaza until a few days ago, where she was forced to leave because it was just getting too dangerous. So, excerpts of that interview will be played out at around 10 minutes to 10. But right now, we're going across to be joined by Director of Programs at the Rivonia Circle, Tessa Dooms. Tessa, good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Yes, with the elections obviously coming up, and I know you're right in the thick of things at this point in time, Tessa, but the whole question surrounding unrepresented political parties, and I see Rivonia Circle expressing disappointment with the ConCourt ruling on signature requirements for these unrepresented political parties.
Yes. So just to give the listeners a bit of a backstory, last year a bill was passed that would allow independent candidates to contest. But part of that bill, quite late in the process actually, a signature requirement was added in, but it didn't only affect independent candidates. So previously, if a political party wanted to be on the national or provincial ballot, all they needed to do was be registered as a political party, which requires 1,000 signatures, and then pay a deposit. Now there's an additional signature requirement for independent candidates and for new political parties that was added last year. That is up to 60,000 signatures to contest nationally and provincially. One South African movement last year took that to court, to the ConCourt, and we as a Rivonia Circle came as friends of the court in support of the idea that those signature requirements are fair, but not only for independent candidates, which the law was actually about, but also for new political parties, because, and not only new, but political parties that are not in parliament already. And our contention is really that if it applies to people not in parliament, why would it not apply to people who are in parliament, given the fact that it's a new election? So it's a new election, a new ballot. Why does it matter that you're in parliament? And therefore, you have different requirements to contest than those who are not. So we won the case last year for independent candidates, and they don't have to get the signatures anymore, only the deposit. But we then found out that the court in the judgment really spoke about the fact that the only reason political parties were not included in that judgment because that was not the request by One South Africa. So we did take that back in December. We waited for the court, and the court has now ruled that it's not an urgent matter. So it hasn't ruled on the merits. It hasn't said anything about whether we are correct or not in our assertions, but just said that they cannot see them hear it on an urgent because the election has already been declared.
But Tessa, the key issue here is when we're talking about political parties, and I'm sure there is a deadline by which or by when political parties need to register with the IEC, and with this requirement, clearly it puts these political parties at a disadvantage because they now need to go out in the open and canvass and get all those signatures.
And is next week Friday for all of those signatures to be gathered. And again, one of the things that we are pointing out is that it doesn't apply to all political parties who are contesting this election. The political parties who have seats in the legislature or as members of parliament already do not have the same requirements as those who do not. And so there's an inherent unfairness we wanted to test with the court because there is an extra burden on getting signatures, getting people's ID numbers, and getting them, at a deadline. So we wanted to test with the court the fairness and the constitutionality of having that requirement, especially because it's not for all those who contest on the ballot.
Now that the ConCourt has actually ruled on this, I mean, I suppose there's no recourse, Tessa.
Well, yes, it does put us in a very difficult situation. So we are consulting with our lawyers about what the next steps would be. But given the electoral timeline and the court saying that they do not see this as urgent, it does make it quite difficult. But we did want to just register our disappointment because it does have an impact on people's ability to contest this election.
Mm. But how can they not see this as urgent? Because the elections are just basically around the corner, and we know that the election date was just recently announced, and what are we? We into February now, so we're basically 3 months away from elections.
I mean, ours is not to try and to um, reason with the court outside of the court. But what the court has said to us is that now that the election date has been proclaimed, that it cannot foresee itself being able to execute this in a timeous way, and that's the only logical conclusion we can reach by. And so I do think that I'm wondering whether we see this as a matter of it's not urgent or whether it's so urgent but we wouldn't have the time to do it. And I think that those two things are unclear for us as well. But again, we have to respect the court's decision, even if we're disappointed by it.
Yes, Tessa, but also at the same time, I mean, we understand what it takes for any new political party to gain traction, to get started, and obviously, from a registration perspective, this is where it actually starts. And one can look at it from both a national and a provincial level, because there are specific requirements on a provincial level as well in terms of the number of signatures required, and some of the provinces not as big as the others, some are sparsely populated, and for any new political party to get logistics in place, to get people to canvass, to get all those signatures, clearly it is extremely difficult.
Elections are costly exercises because you are having to get boots on the ground in communities anyway to canvass people for their votes. When you're thinking about canvassing people for votes, where the logistics is really on the side of the IEC, the day of the vote, getting people out. That's a very different thing than the burden of doing signatures. So if you think about 61,000 signatures, you need the resources to get boots on the ground. Those signatures are divided differently in different provinces. So you can't even get all of those signatures just in one province. Each province has a different quota. So really the organization that it takes, the manpower it takes, the time that it takes, the resources that it takes, does put a big burden, additional burden on incoming and newly contesting or people who are not in parliament. And really, again, we are pointing out the fact that that does not apply to political parties who are in parliament. And even though, when we get to each election is a new election. It doesn't matter how many seats you have in parliament. When you're on the ballot afresh. And I think that that's where some of the issues about parity really are concerning to us.
Well, Tessa, I've actually read basically a comment where talking about, while this matter was being thrashed out in court, what the IEC had said is they will continue to leave open their platform where unrepresented political parties can submit their signatures to ensure that no party is prejudiced should the court decline to amend the signature requirement. Now, what do they actually mean by that, leaving it open or leaving their platform open for these unrepresented political parties?
I would not be able to answer to that at all. What the IEC has said is it is a gazetted time frame. The electoral timetable is gazetted, which means it is now put into policy. And so I'd be interested to know what they mean by that. If they were waiting for a decision of the court has now made a decision about urgency. Perhaps not about merits, but certainly about urgency. I think now it is up to the IEC to decide how it responds to that. I am not sure why the IEC would say it's keeping it open when it has actually given deadlines. What is the point
And
of sending deadlines if it's intending to keep it open?
so at this point in time, you don't know what the deadline would be, Tessa.
Vetted um, timetable is next week Friday.
Next week, Friday. Is that what it
And
is?
so the IEC, if you're saying the IEC said they'll keep it open, then it remains to be seen whether the IEC will stick to that. But it's gazetted that way, and so we would anticipate that the IEC would expect all of those signatures by next week Friday. Again, it's really important for us to know that the way the electoral timetable plays out is usually quite predictable from year to year. And because we have this introduction of a new electoral system this year, the IEC is playing it by ear. And I think that was part of the reason why we said this is an urgent matter, because we did want it to be resolved as soon as possible to give the IEC clarity. I think what the court has deprived us of now is of clarity, and I think that's disappointing.
Well, it is, and I do hear the disappointment in your voice and coming through from the Rivonia Circle as well. But certainly, we will watch the space, and it'll be interesting to try and get hold of somebody from IEC to actually provide, to shed some light and to provide clarity on the matter. But for now, Tessa, we thank you for taking time out and talking to us right here on Solar Media.
Thank you so much.
Tessa Dooms with us this morning, Director of Programs at the Rivonia Circle, and saying that this is clearly a setback for access to justice. Their disappointment with the ConCourt ruling on signature requirements for new political parties that are not represented in Parliament, and again raising the question as to why does this not apply to all parties? And think about it. Think about it. How difficult it is firstly to register a political party, and in a short space of time to canvass, and if you want to contest this election on a national level, on a provincial level, the requirements, and as Tessa pointed out, it's a costly exercise. It requires money, it requires manpower, it requires just so much right across the entire country. And again, huge question marks again being raised with regard to the electoral system within which we operate. And with that, we're going to go for a break. We come back, we'll be joined by Naweed Mohammed, Fund Development Team leader at Islamic Relief South Africa.
Rejuvenating Media Day.